All right, now questions. How many of you guys have heard of storm control before? Obviously, if you've sat a CCNP class before, you may have heard of this. Or if you have an environment where you ever have occasional issues with layer 2 broadcast storms. This is, one of those kind of niche weird things that not everybody hears about. So how does this work? Well, it's one way that we can kind of help to prevent against broadcast storms. So if you guys maybe have some twin-ax cables and like the UDLD guard wouldn't be applicable, or maybe if you have just some uplinks that aren't very helpful in a situation where when we looked at spanning tree and we had some of those stabilization mechanisms where those wouldn't be applicable for your environment. Storm control is kind of a good alternative to those mechanisms. So how this works is we can monitor traffic based on overall percentage. So do we want to look at 10 gig interfaces? Do we want to look at 10% of the traffic or 20% of the traffic? We can also look at packets per second. We can even look at bits per second. So there's a couple different ways we can configure this. And then basically what happens is we're constantly monitoring this interface, all right? We monitor it over a particular interval, like a 1 second interval. And while we're monitoring it, we're basically going to say, how does this compare? And we can monitor different types of traffic too. It doesn't just have to be broadcast. What if we want to monitor, unicast or multicast traffic? We can do that too. But in the event that we go above a rising threshold, hey, maybe after 80%, things start to get a little bit funky. We can kind of do a couple different things. We can just start sending a trap. We can start shutting the interface down. So there's quite a variety of different ways that you can kind of play around with storm control. But it's going to be used on a port by port basis. Of course, it can be implemented with port channels as well. And it allows us to be able to look at different types of traffic. So that's kind of nice. So here they give us an example. Once we've gone into an interface, the storm control command, we can start looking at broadcast traffic, and the level is going to usually be a percent. So do we want to maybe send a trap when we hit the lower threshold? Do we want to actually start shutting the port down when we hit that upper threshold? There's all sorts of things that we can do. So percentage, bits per second, and packet per second, a couple different ways that we can do that. When you just see the numeric value like this, think percent. When you see packets per second and bits per second, you'll be able to see the different ways that you can configure the levels. And then we can indicate, what happens when we hit those thresholds. So storm control action, do we want to shut it? Do we want to send a trap? And then we also have some show commands like the show storm control, which will tell us what ports we have it on. Is it, currently forwarding? Has it been shut down? What is the upper and lower thresholds? How much traffic is currently on the interface? And then in addition to things like show storm control, there's also the show storm control unicast or the show storm control broadcast. So you can see some of the other parameters that you may have configured.